Good afternoon. My name is Joe Bandel, and I am the last Rosicrucian. Today we're going to talk about Hoke Advantage number 17, Overcoming Altruistic Ethics. Now, this whole idea of neo-cheaters destroying values and dangers of altruistic ethics is really tricky. And I don't even know if I can successfully get across what I'm trying to say, but I'm going to try uh, to express some things, and to do that, I actually need to refer to the words of some of the neotech material and also uh, some information from Max Stirner, who was a German writer who a lot of people believe that he influenced Nietzsche, as he wrote in the early 1800s, and he wrote about the ego and its own was his one of his main books. So there's some concepts, and we're gonna hack away at this because this is not simple. What we're trying to do is find what's wrong with the core of our society. What really is the issue? Because we already know, at least I believe, that the solution is that if each person followed that still small voice of conscience that's in their heart, and they were doing what it was they were truly meant to do in this lifetime, that it would create win-win-win situations all around. But somehow we have created a world of external authorities all around us that are all constantly screaming at us that we need to give our time and energy to other things that are more important than our own concerns. So, and that is so prevalent. We have to try to crack that nut if it's even possible to crack it. And there's going to be many ways of doing it. But this advantage is going to take a stab at it. So, the most harmful neo-cheaters operate through government, religion, public education, and dishonest journalism. Does that strike a bell? Have we heard that before? Fake news, mass media, the educational systems. Just saying. Such people must always fake self-esteem to justify their destructive existences. Fake esteem, fake self-esteem. In other words, they feel good about destroying the contributions, the values of others. They basically, their hierarchy. They're like, I'm on top, and probably through my smarts, I'm smarter than you, so I'm going to just manipulate everything to the way that I believe it happens, as opposed to simply following their heart and being truly competent at the basics in life. They would rather have slaves do the work, basically. And so they do that by slyly attacking businesses and anybody who's really trying to contribute something of value. And something of value in today's world increasingly is going to be dealing with issues of safety, security, survival, having enough food, having a roof over our heads, having shelter for ourselves and our loved ones. In other words, we're moving into a tough time. These people who are trying to steer humanity into a headspace dominated arena, they're not our friends. We need to step back and say, hey, let's create self-sustaining communities somehow. It's getting important. It's time. And you talk about a moral superiority. Who's thinking, I'll just ask a question here. Moral superiority. Who thinks they're better than everybody else? Who thinks they got all the answers out there? Who, if there's anybody in this world who is committing the sin of pride, who is it? The ones that look down on the common people, the ones that look down on the simple folk, the ones that look down on the people with human emotions that follow their heart. Destroying these things that are important, destroying spirituality, the idea of religion, destroying the idea of what's sacred, not realizing that modern cutting edge science has the increasing ability to integrate what is considered the metaphysical, the spiritual, and the cult. In other words, these people they're fractured. They only have they have a little part of the story they're trying to sell as having everything and trying to have a moral superiority. So, let's see what Max Stirner had to say about some of this. And he's going to be talking about God, the Supreme Being. And he's saying, well, I'm going to try to paraphrase what he's saying here. He's talking about, well, we're all supposed to be thinking about God. And God is the highest thing that we should be thinking about. But he says, well, what does God think about? What's God's highest cause? And we're not supposed to, it's like, well, what does God think is good? What's God's highest cause, highest priority? And they think, well, the God's cause, his highest priority is mankind, is truth, freedom, the freedom of humanity, of justice. And further, the cause of humanity, the leaders, in other words, God chooses leaders for countries by divine, that he concerns himself with that. Uh, and finally, even the cause of mind and 1,000 other causes. There's only, these are all causes that God intends for us to be concerned about. You think about, as we think about our God as an external authority, well, what about all these other things? What about God's cause? What about mankind's cause? What about humanity, truth, justice? All of these are causes, and all of these are calling out to us. But there's only one cause that's forbidden to us. This is the point he's getting at. There's one cause, one thing, one consideration that we must never consider. And that's our cause. What's important to us? No. So we should never, that's the forbidden thing, is to think about what's good for us. It's okay to think about what's good for all these other things. This is the way society is saying. Shame on the egoist who thinks only of himself. Our society teaches that. Shame on you if you're an egoist who thinks only of yourself, only thinks of yourself. Not understanding that if you're truly doing what you were meant to do in this life, you benefit, your loved ones benefit, your community benefits, the entire world benefits. That's why this whole thing, we're forced to choose. Do you believe in humanity? Do you believe in the good of humanity, or do you believe in the evil in humanity? We're being forced to choose. So he continues. Well then, what cause are we to work for, to devote ourselves to be enthusiastic about? If we can't be our own cause, if it can't be our own interests, well then what are we supposed to be excited about? Then he talks about God. He says, you have so much profound information about God. There's so many notions about God. And for thousands of years, humanity has searched for the Godhead. They've searched for an understanding of God. Even though it's like God is beyond human understanding, they're still trying to understand God. And they're creating concepts of what God is. Even though by the very definition of what God is, he's beyond human comprehension. Doesn't matter, they're making false idols. So he asks, well then, what is God's cause? What's God's concern? What that we need to obey? Because God is our master, he's the external authority. We need to do what he tells us to do. That's what society is saying. That's what religion is saying. So what is God's concern? What's he want us to do? Has he demanded of us? We've been demanded, what he's demanded is ignore yourself, your own cause. Do these things instead. Well, what about him? What has he done? Has he done the same thing for himself? Has he said, well, that God is interested in some foreign cause? No. What he says, God's cause is his cause. God concerns himself with his own business, but we can't concern ourselves with our own business. Isn't that kind of two-faced? That's kind of where he's coming at from here. And he says, you're shocked by this misunderstanding, and you tell us that God's cause is indeed the cause of truth and love, and that this cause cannot be alien to God, because God is himself truth and love. So God's cause is truth and love, because God is truth and love. But we're not truth and love. Again, you got that. Okay, is humanity evil and unclean? It says, you are shocked by the assumption that God could be like us poor worms in furthering an alien cause as his own. In other words, he shouldn't be thinking selfishly about his own cause. He should be thinking about something else. He should be thinking about us. Should God take up the cause of truth if he were not himself truth? He cares only for his cause, but because he is all in all, therefore everything is his cause. Because he's all things, his interest, his concern is all things. So he's concerned about what he is. But we can't be concerned about what we are. We have to be concerned about what God wants us to do, that external authority thing. But we are not all in all. We're not omnipotent. And our cause, what's important to us, is altogether little and contemptible. Therefore, we must serve a higher cause, God's cause. And there's people out there that'll tell us what that is. Unless, of course, we believe that God speaks to us through the still small voice of conscience, through that divine spark within the human heart. Again, this is getting into the idea of external authority or internal authority. Do you believe in an external authority? Do you believe in an internal authority? And have no other God before you. Now it is clear, God cares only for what is his, busies himself only with himself, thinks only of himself, and has only himself before his eyes. Woe to all that are not well-pleasing to him. He serves no higher person and satisfies only himself. His cause, what he concerns himself with is a purely egoistic cause. But for us to have a egoistic cause, for us to be concerned about things that are important to ourselves, is wrong. Because we're not as big and we're not as great. And buried in this someplace is that concept of neo-cheater. That we're getting to the core of the whole philosophical neo-cheater thing, where some external authority is trying to tell us what God wants of us, wants us to do. So in this episode here, in this advantage, we're just bringing up God for a little bit here to get started in our exploration. But there's going to be a lot more. But we just leave it with this. There's kind of a double standard, and there's people that jump on this because they get power by saying that they speak for God. And you got to listen to them because they speak for God, rather than letting each individual speak for themselves. And I'm going to say something further, and I'm going to say that humanity is at a place of making an evolutionary quantum leap. And the quantum leap that humanity is making is going from a collective group hive mind to individuation. In other words, the individual is a higher evolutionary stature than the hive mind. We'll leave you at that. We're rattling some thoughts around. This is going to continue. We'll see you next time.